Today I'm at a very important place for the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. I'm at the St. Michael's Gold-Top Cathedral in Kiev, central Ukraine. And this is where they have the memorial wall of those fallen men and women in the Ukrainian-Russian conflict and war, and this border dispute that has been going on now heavily, I guess, since the annexation of Crimea, when Russia first invaded Ukraine. That was in 2014. 8 years later, people would say they've been in war the whole time, and 8 years later there's been massive rising tensions again in the area. Russia has put 100,000 troops on the border. The UK, USA, Australian embassies have sent all their people home, and you know, the tension is there that people believe that Russia is going to invade Ukraine. Now, why is this happening? Why now? Recently, at a World Summit, the Russian President Vladimir Putin has basically said that he doesn't want NATO expanding any further east in Europe. NATO was formed in the 50s and 60s, essentially to stop the USSR expansion. But then the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, and therefore Ukraine has been independent of the Soviet Union for 31 years. And a lot of, you know, ex-Soviet states have become NATO aligned, and what Vladimir Putin doesn't want is Ukraine, which was, I guess, a lot of people say, the jewel of the Soviet embassy, to become NATO aligned and within the European Union. Even if 58% of Ukrainians want to be within the European Union and 64% of Ukrainians don't mind a NATO alliance. But Vladimir Putin and pro-Russians out there see that this is Russian Soviet land that's been torn apart by war and conflict, and that NATO have no business here. And I think this is a side of the story that a lot of people don't sort of look into, because I think Russians in so many things are just seen as the bad guy. I think if we link it back to Australia, imagine if New Zealand was aligning with China. Would we say something about that? You know, Russia see this differently to how a lot on the West see it, as far as we see it as Russian aggression, where they will say, well, that was our land only 30 years ago and you're the aggressors. And you can be sure that on the other side of that border there's a wall with just as many names of young men and young women on it as this one. Now the question is, will we see an invasion, or will we see an all-out war? Well, many would say if you go to the east, it is a war. There's people in trenches 50 metres from the Russians. There's 100,000 Russians on the border. The US, the UK and Canada are sending weapons to that border, training, skills, and the US has deployed 3,000 to 4,000 troops into Eastern European countries. But will we see an invasion? Personally, I don't believe so. The cost of war, both the cost of blood spilt and the economic cost, is something that I don't believe is in anyone's interest. And Ukraine is an incredibly difficult place to conquer. It is a massive country. It has an incredibly strong defence force. Yes, it's not as strong as the Russian, but it is backed by the West. And the blood spilt, the lives lost, the money, I'm not sure if that will be where we will see this end. And I think probably the biggest reason that we might not see Russia invade is that if Russia do invade, then NATO, being in just west of where Ukraine is, the NATO alliance will become stronger than ever. We will see more funding than ever put into it, and we will need NATO more than we maybe ever had. So I personally don't think that we will see an all-out war, an attempt at conquering. But if we were, well, there's plenty more blue wall here that will be filled with names of young men and young women who will be killed in this conflict, and that's shocking.
Yeah,
Yeah.